Hi, I'm with Dr. Kath Cosgrave, and I'm with the marathon team for the Community Connector program in Marathon, Ontario. Sarah and Brett, I'll get you to introduce yourselves.
Sure, why don't I'll go first, Brett.
You
So
go
my
ahead.
name's Sarah. Berry. I'm a rural generalist family physician in the community of Marathon, and I've been here for 28 years now, and am part of the Community Connector community committee here in Marathon. Brett?
Yeah, my name is Brett Redden. I've been in Marathon since 2006. I've been physician recruiter and retention coordinator since 2010. And I am also originally from Newfoundland and St. John's, and I'm actually here right now at my hometown. So I'm proud to be here. Thanks for having me, and look forward to speaking with you tonight.
Okay, so this interview is for us to check in. We haven't talked to the marathon crew since about 2021. And since we launched the Establishing the Community Connector program and the revised Attract Connect Stay website, I was interested in checking in with them. I had sent them that program and asking how they were going and to keep us up to date with what's happening in the original Community Connector site, as we call it in Australia. So to get started, perhaps I'll start with you, Sarah. We're interested in developments and impacts in Marathon. What key developments have occurred with your Community Connector program since our last interview in 2021?
Yeah, thanks for the question, Kath. And I would say that we have not grown the program locally, but I think coming out of COVID, I actually feel really pleased that we've been able to successfully sustain the program, including the commitments to funding that we have. And we have been able to continue to support learners and locums and have a stable physician group here. We also have been able to support Brett to some extent to be able to connect with other recruiters across Northern Ontario in particular, but also across Canada, to be able to support them in their efforts and understanding what a community connector or concierge kind of service can look like in their communities. From a local standpoint, though, I would say we've been pleased simply to be sustaining the services that we have as we emerge from the pandemic here.
Thank you, Sarah. And I'll perhaps ask you the second question, and then we'll just jump to Brett. So in this group of questions, how has the Community Connector program continued to impact the residents of Marathon, Ontario? And have you received any feedback since we last spoke about those impacts from your community?
Yeah, I think because Brett has been in his role for some time and we have had a stable physician workforce and a fairly steady stream of locums and learners through the community, Brett's role in some ways has become a bit like oxygen. You don't notice that it's there until it's gone. And so I don't think that there's actually been a lot of community feedback around the role because it's been successful and because we have not had disruptions in clinical service locally. There has not been any physician crisis here. And so the community, I think, is generally pleased and in many ways, in some ways, I think a bit unaware of how successful it is because there has been no crisis here. I would say that Brett is very diligent about posting in social media when we've had locums or learners who have been here, sharing the activities that they've done and sharing their experiences with their consent, of course. And the feedback from community in those social media posts is always a very positive. They're delighted to know that we have locums and learners, delighted to know that Brett's in the role that he has been in, but it has really been at that level of sort of social media celebration of good things.
So, Brett, I might get you to start with this question, and it's off the script now. In comparison to other places in the north of Canada, how much better is Marathon doing than average? What's the picture in other places?
Yeah, I mean, we've been fortunate to maintain, obviously, to complement. I think it's always difficult to put an actual kind of stamp on it, just because certain communities, I don't know all the complements, obviously, of all the actual groups. with inside like our region. Like for instance, some are 2, some are 3, some are 5. And when you look around, you know, we do have communities that have as many physicians. You know, neighboring one in Nipigon, about an hour and a half or an hour outside of Thunder Bay, they have 8 physicians there that come and go. And we have 7 right now. And I feel like, you know, there's always that fluctuation of up and down, obviously with physician recruitment and retention. And in some communities, they only have 1. You know, some have gone from 3 to 1, some have gone from 2 to 4, down to 2. So there's always that little bit of fluctuation. So I think it's really hard to pinpoint whether we're doing, I would say, what I would say is we're probably the most stable. I think that's probably the best way to say it. As you know, Sarah mentioned, we've never had really that crisis point, and that's, you know, that's what obviously we're all trying to avoid.
Well, you did
from any
way back, you did have crisis points. That's what.
Yeah.
Yeah. So originally, right, 2010, 2011 was obviously a touch and go. And then it kind of grew from that like I would say 2012 onward, it started to look a little prettier for sure.
So you're a stable workforce. You're pretty confident if you lose a physician that you're going to be able to replace them in the short, medium term. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, I would say in the average term. I mean, we tend to get it usually still in that year, still that 12 to 18 month average in Canada right now for, you know, when you first to recruit somebody. Obviously depends on the group. Sometimes it's instantaneous, right? We're very fortunate with having Sarah in the position she's in, with the access that we have for all the NOSM residents and students that come through. And we have recruited obviously from that pool before and been successful. And we still have people here today because of that, that worked through NOSM. They were students, residents, and started with us right after graduation. And we'll continue to have that. I mean, that's kind of a vision that Sarah had, I know, years and years ago before anyone ever really thought of it. And being able to have medical students. We used to only be able to, you know, we weren't even having residents at certain points. We were mostly just having medical students, but obviously that's expanded, and now we're having PGY1s and PGY2s, and that allows us obviously to start them right upon graduation after PGY2. So if they don't obviously continue on with further education.
Right. And Sarah, just quickly, could you say what NOSM is and any comments on that question around workforce?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, thanks for that. So NOSM is the Northern Ontario School of Medicine University now. It originated in 2002, brought in its first class of undergrad learners in 2005. And so we'll be celebrating its 20th year next year. And so that has been probably the single most important physician workforce strategy for Northern Ontario. But despite NOSM's presence, what is very clear is actually that broadly across Northern Ontario, and again, for your viewers, Northern Ontario is a massive geography. It's the size of France and Germany put together with actually a relatively small population. So there's less than 1 million people, 850,000 people in roughly 800,000 square kilometers. So it's a very highly rural and remote geography. So NOSM was created really to help address physician workforce strategy. But what we've seen broadly is a decline in physician workforce, both in Northern Ontario and certainly across the province of Ontario. Ontario has roughly 14 million people, and the last data was that roughly 2.4 million people now are without a family physician in the province of Ontario, and that's forecasted to be 4.4 million by 2026. So as will be no surprise, I think, for your audience, when the human resource challenges increase in urban settings, there tends to be a magnification of those challenges in rural settings. And we have certainly seen that as we've emerged from the pandemic. We have communities now in Northern Ontario that have no physicians at all, and that is new. We have more communities that are dramatically under their designated complement. So the complement is the number of physician positions that the Ministry of Health designates for a community in order to be able to access things like recruitment incentives or retention incentives for those positions. And what I am hearing in my role as Associate Dean of Physician Workforce Strategy for Northern Ontario is that for the majority of communities in Northern Ontario, things have actually not been worse than they are now, including for some of our large rural settings. And so this is a time that I think the stability that we've been able to maintain in Marathon really is a marker of significant success as we see communities around us struggle even more than they were struggling pre-pandemic. And as you know, physician workforce challenges are chronic in many of our rural communities, and that is absolutely the case in Northern Ontario.
Yeah. And very similar in Australia. Things are much worse because with those shortages are now appearing in urban for all health workforce, but particularly in our case, the GP workforce.
Right.
We are beginning to see communities as well who don't have a GP, as we've also got baby boomers retiring, and it's not such an attractive position as it once was to take up. And so those smaller complements that you were talking about, Brett, are really struggling. If they lose one, I think, or two, they lose their physician workforce.
Yeah.
So talking about expansion and adaptation now, what has it been like to see your community's health workforce strengthening initiative become an evidence-based online program in Australia, with now multiple established sites, because I keep these guys up to date, everyone, and influencing government programs like the New South Wales Welcoming Experience? Brett, I might start with you on that one.
Yeah, so obviously it's humbling. I mean, to see a small community such as Marathon, mentioned and accepted as a successful recruitment model for communities within Australia, but just to hear our name anywhere outside of Marathon's always pleasing. Most people are still trying to figure out whether we're a community or promoting running, right? So we're doing our best in terms of doing a geography lesson, but I think from my perspective, just as a recruiter, obviously, just to actually have our community out there and actually have an actual platform for it to be spread in terms of how the actual program is affecting not only our community, but hearing some stuff from your end as well, and some of the interviews and stuff like that I've seen online. So it's obviously humbling, and we're honored to be a part of it. So
right. And Sarah?
Yeah, I think it's super exciting. And I one of the things that I found really, really valuable, Kath, is when I look at the work that you've done to articulate in ways that we have not, what the elements of the model are in terms of the attract, connect, stay, and the modules that you've formatted. I feel like what you have done is give language and structure to what for us began as a fairly intuitive kind of process. And, I feel that it is brilliant that the model that you recognized as potentially quite powerful has been accepted in a way in Australia that I think, as an outsider looking into what's happening there, has seemed to have significant impact. And certainly it is my dream that we could convince a broader cross-section of communities in Canada to take this work that you have done and adopt it in a new way in the Canadian context, because we know that it can work. But the structure that you have provided for it, I think, makes it much easier for communities to adopt and adapt to their particular context in ways that can be both meaningful and impactful. So from my standpoint, it is really exciting to see this have wings in Australia.
All right, thank